დილამშვიდობის მოგესალმებით ყველას. მეგონი პირდაპირ გადავიდეთ საქმეზე. მორიგი საჩუქარი მივიდა ჩვენ იტალიიდან. ეს არის ძალიან გადამეტების გარეშე. იტალიის საელჩოსთან თანამშრომლობა არის ჩვენი სფეროსთვის ძალიან პრინციპული, მნიშვნელოვანი. ეს არ მოყვება ყველა იმ მიმართულებას, რაში ჩვენ უკვე ძალიან დიდი წარმატებები გვაქვს, რა თქმა უნდა, საგამოფენო სფეროში, სამეცნიერო სფეროში. დღეს გვაქვს ჩვენ საშუალება გავაგრძელოთ ჩვენი ვორქშოპების სერია, ბატონი ანტონი ხო დეტალურად ისაუბრებს ამაზე. მეცნიერი შემდგომში შევეცდები რამდენიმე სიტყვით წარმოვადგინო, რა არის ეს ჩვენთვის მნიშვნელოვანი, ყველაზე პრინციპული არის და მარტივი, მე ვიტყვი, აი ეს სლოგანი გუშინთვის ხვალ, როგორ იყოს ინტეგრირებული, ამის საუკეთესო მაგალითია იტალია. ყოველგვარი გადამეტების გარეშე და დიფერამბების იტალია არის მოდელი, სადაც ერთმანეთს ხდება ნამდვილი, რა თქმა უნდა, უმნიშვნელოვანესი კაცობრიობისთვის უმნიშვნელოვანესი მემკვიდრეობა, მაგრამ ამასთან ერთად მისი წარმოდგენა თანამედროვე არის აბსოლუტურად თანამედროვე ტექნოლოგიით და ესთეტიკით. ჩვენ თუ ამ მიმართულებით ვიმუშავებთ საქართველოში, ვფიქრობ, რომ ეს ის მოდელია, რომლისკენაც უნდა წავიდეთ ჩვენ ყველა ერთად. და დღეს გვექნება საშუალება ნახოთ უნიკალური და განსაკუთრებული გამოცდილება სხვადასხვა მიმართულებით თანამედროვე სამუზეუმო სფეროში და რა ძალიან პრინციპულია სამუზეუმო სფეროში ბუნებრივი ინტეგრაცია ტექნოლოგიური პროცესის და არა მხოლოდ ვთქვათ ამა თუ იმ კომპანიასთან შეგვეთით რაღაც კონკრეტული მაგალითად აუდიო-გიდების ჩართვა და ასე შემდეგ. მე მინდა ყველას მოგიწოდოთ, რომ დავინახოთ ხედვა ამის უკრა რაც არის და მე კიდევ ერთხელ ვთქვა მოვალ შეგაწუხეთ კიდევ დღეს, მაგრამ პირველ რიგში ჩვენ საქართველოში ვიყოთ მზად იმისთვის, რომ აი ეს მიდგომა, რასაც შეხედავთ წამყვან მსოფლიოს წამყვან ქვეყნებში ის იყოს ინტეგრირებული და ადაპტირებული ჩვენთან. შეუძლებელია მოდელის პირდაპირ გამოყენება, ასე ვთქვათ, copy-paste, მაგრამ ეს არის საშუალება ფიქრის და ასევე საშუალება დავინახოთ მართვა, რას ქვია უმაღლესი რანგი. დიდი მადლობა, it's my pleasure to invite Antonio, please. Now, Antonio არის ვიცით ყველა, Antonio წარდგენა არ ჭირდება, ეს არის იტალიის ერთ-ერთი ვიარვიტყვი იტალიის საუკეთესო ელჩი, მაგრამ ყოველ შემთხვევაში ჩვენი უდიდესი მეგობარი, განსაკუთრებული დამოკიდებულებით და მე კიდევ რამეს მინდა ხაზი გაუსვა. ეს არის ის ადამიანი, რომელიც არის მოდელი, როგორი უნდა იყოს დიპლომატი, როგორ არ უნდა იყოს ძალიან ვიწრო ჩარჩოებში და ეძებდეს სწორედ ინოვაციებს იგივე საერთაშორისო პოლიტიკაში და მე ვიტყოდი დღევანდელი დღე სწორედ კლასიკურის და ინოვაციების შეხვედრის ადგილი.
Innovative in diplomacy.
I was saying this that I didn't understand the last word, so I hope they are good things. Good morning, everybody, and it's nice to see you all. And it's just to provide the general idea of this workshop and the others. This is the framework of a great collaboration that we have been developing with the Ministry of Culture, and I thank Deputy Minister Kardashvili and the President of the Education, Science and Culture Committee of the Parliament, Managing for the attention of Georgian authorities on these matters. And then in collaboration with academic institutions, mainly Tbilisi State University, but not only, and of course the museum that hosts us today. What we did, we have started bringing some important exhibitions and conceiving these initiatives together. And I would say that there are four main objectives. The first is to bring here the giants of universal culture, so that Georgian people can witness firsthand some masterpieces. The second, which is very linked to the philosophy of the merge of the ministry, science, culture, is to transform these initiatives into educational platforms for schools and universities. The third is to enrich the cultural offer of this already wonderful city, so that Tbilisi is ever more also a cultural capital, being even more equipped to attract tourists. And the fourth, last but not least, is to foster more structured and permanent collaborations, also in the field of not only of organizing other exhibits, but of collaborating in the protection and promotion of the cultural heritage. And so we have, you know, the things we have done together in the past, Leonardo, Raffaello, Michelangelo, Caravaggio, Tiziano, and many other things. We are working together also with the ministry on future exhibits from the Chirico to the Roman mosaics. But we are also running this program of new technologies and cultural heritage. So how new technology can help protect and promote cultural heritage, sharing the Italian experience. I recommend that this is an interaction. We don't want to lecture anybody. We want to have a dialogue. The first episode was on. We called it. Probably some of you were attending storytelling. So our digital can help tell the story that is behind an art object. This seminar, this dialogue is focused on 21st century museums. You know, I'm saying banal things, but notwithstanding true, that is a little bit like the transformation from television into social media. I mean, once television, there was only journalist television, so you were a passive spectator, you were given what you were given, and you adjusted the freedom to choose the channel. Now, internet TV and social media have transformed the once spectator into the co-protagonist. The same applies to museums. So the museums are not only repositories of precious objects, but are platforms to educate, to inform, to engage, to emotion. And I would say the dream is that, as in the 90s was popular, even later, for people to go to the mall to spend the weekend, that the museum can become more and more a reference point for people to spend, or in Italy there was a period where they went to IKEA to eat the Swedish meatballs. And I think it's much better to spend, to have a lunch in a cafeteria of a nice museum surrounded by beauty, and also educating also our kids to the sense of beauty. But to do that, a museum have to be engaging, and so take advantage of the new technologies. Is always a tool, it's not the end. And so this is the result of multiple factors, of nice, very good architects, and a fascinating internal display of technologies, of curators, and so we brought some of these aspects here with some success stories. There is one of the best, the representative, one of the best architects studios, Magni, Mani. They designed, I'm starting from the outside, they designed more than 40 museums all across the world. Architetto Magni will focus on some of them. For example, one is the amazing Opera del Duomo in Florence Museum, but not only, and explaining what are the main factors of an attractive architecture able to create the conditions to engage the public. And of course, the design has to be realized, and Georgian is the leading company in the world for the art of case of system display in the museums. And so they did from the case from the Gioconda in Louvre to the jewels of the Tower of London, and they are really top class, and not only in realizing the material, but in designing these cases in a way that is at the same time cutting-edge technology and can allow the best experience for the visitor. The visitor is at the center, so as I said, technologies cannot prevail for one reason that they serve, they are aimed at enhancing the beauty of the artwork. So the technology is not the protagonist, but the visitor remains the protagonist. And so we will have the experience of Dr. Pagano from CNR. CNR is the leading research hub in Italy, gathering more than 100 institutes, 4,000 researchers and 1,500 technicians. They have several institutes focused on these aspects of technologies for cultural heritage. In particular, Dr. Pagano belongs to the virtual heritage lab of CNR ITA-BC, so visual applications and technologies to engage the visitors, but always keeping the visitor at the center. And so it's useful to understand what are the guidelines and also the constraints, not to overwhelm the visitor, but to engage an emotion, not to frighten. And of course, the result of all that is a museum. And so we brought one of the success stories of the recent history of museums in Italy. You know, we have widespread beauty. We have, I can't remember I think two museums ever. I can't remember, but I mean the peculiarity of Italy is to be very widespread. So we have museums all over the country. And so these, let me say that this is important, these tools are important not only for the most important museums, but for the smaller ones also, that they can complement their assets with these. But the Opera del Duomo is an important museum. The Egyptian Museum is an important museum. It's the second. It's considered the second most important collection after Cairo, so after Egypt. And they underwent a massive renovation that lasted 5 years. That is a model for public-private collaboration, and they managed to completely renew the museum while continuing having visitors. And the results are, in the first year, they had 500,000 visitors, and the first year after the renovation, they had 1 million. So the results are there. Just me say a final. Let me say a final word on the next appointment that will be on the 8th of February at the Tbilisi State University. Is a way of concluding, of wrapping up the celebrations of 100th anniversary of the most important university in Georgia. We are honored about that, and it will be about smart cities and cultural heritage. So we will have the superintendent of Pompeii that will talk about the project of Smart Pompeii, a system, a technological system aiming at the same time guarantee the best surveillance of the site, but also to engage the visitors in one of the largest archaeological areas in the world. There will be Professor Del Bimbo from the University of Florence, is one of the most important experts in smart cities. There will be another representative of GNR from visual engines. They have applications from parking lots to archives on cities and cultural heritage. There will be M9, which is the brand new museum in Venice, actually Mestre, the entirely digital museum on the history of the 20th century, but also one of aiming at becoming one of these center of aggregation for the city beyond being a simple museum. And I hope there will be also Artemide or other companies showcasing the best experiences in public-private partnership in, for example, lighting important and prestigious areas of the cities with the funding and the collaboration of the cutting-edge technology companies. I stop here, and I am glad to leave the floor to Mariam Jashi, the chair of the Education, Culture and Science Committee of the Parliament of Georgia. Please.
მოგესალმებით გავრცელებული ბატონებო, ბატონო ერჩო, მე მინდა განათლების მეცნიერებისა და კულტურის კომიტეტის სახელით განსაკუთრებული მადლობა მოგახსენოთ იმ ხელშეწყობისთვის, რომელსაც თქვენ უზრუნველყოფთ საქართველოს და იტალიის ორმხრივი თანამშრომლობის ხელშეწყობის მიმართულებით. იმედია ფარგლანი უკვე არის კიდევ ერთხელ დიდი მადლობა თქვენი პირადი წვლილისთვის ჩვენს ქვეყნებს შორის ორმხრივი თანამშრომლობის ხელშეწყობისთვის, განსაკუთრებით კულტურის სფეროში და კულტურული მემკვიდრეობის დაცვის მიმართულებით. ჩვენ მომსწრენივად კულტურის სამინისტროს ხელშეწყობით და ეროვნული მუზეუმის ხელშეწყობით უპრეცედენტო გამოფენების, რომელსაც საქართველოს უმასპინძლა იტალიის წამყვანი მუზეუმების შედევრების ექსპოზიციებით, რაც გახდა აბსოლუტურად უდიდესი საჩუქარი საქართველოს საზოგადოებისთვის და დღევანდელი სერია ვორქშოპების ასევე არის ერთ-ერთი უმნიშვნელოვანესი მიმართულება, რომელიც დღეს ხორციელდება იტალიის საელჩოს ხელშეწყობით. მოგესალმებით, რომ სემინარის სერია ეძღვნება კულტურული მემკვიდრეობის დაცვის საკითხებში იტალიური გამოცდილების გაზიარებას და დღევანდელი თემა გახლავთ ახალი ტექნოლოგიების დანერგვა და ახალი ტექნოლოგიების მართვა მუზეუმების ხელშეწყობისთვის. საქართველოსთვის კონკრეტულად პირველ რიგში იტალიის გამოცდილების გაზიარება ქვეყნის, რომელიც გახლავთ მსოფლიო მემკვიდრეობის უდიდესი ნაწილის სამშობლო იუნესკოს მსოფლიო მემკვიდრეობის სიის ყველაზე ვრცელი ჩამონათვლის სამშობლო ბუნებრივია განსაკუთრებით საყურადღებოა. ახალი ტექნოლოგიების დანერგვა რამდენიმე მიმართულებით იქნება მნიშვნელოვანი. პირველ რიგში, როგორც გაერთიანებული მოწყების, განათლებისა და კულტურის მოწყების ერთობლივი ძალისხმევისთვის ჩვენ უნდა გავზარდოთ მიმსიდველობა მუზეუმების ახალგაზრდა თაობისთვის, მოსწავლეებისა და სტუდენტებისთვის. ეს არის ერთი მნიშვნელოვანი მიმართულება. მეორე, საქართველოში ჩვენ ვართ მზარდი ტენდენციის მომსწრე ტურიზმის განვითარების კუთხით. ასევე უპრეცედენტო მასშტაბებს მიაღწია საქართველოში ტურისტების და ვიზიტორების რაოდენობა და ბუნებრივია თანამედროვე ტექნოლოგიების დანერგვა მოგცემს საშუალებას, რომ კიდევ უფრო გავზარდოთ როლი ჩვენი მუზეუმების და დაინტერესება ჩვენი ქვეყნის სტუმრების, ჩვენი ეროვნული საბანძურების და ასევე არაქართული წარმომავლობის, მაგრამ საქართველოს მუზეუმებში დაცული სამრჯეების თვალსაზრისით. აქვე მინდა ხაზი გავუსვა, რომ უახლოესი სტატისტიკის მიხედვით საქართველოში ტურიზმის 75%-ზე მეტი სწორედ მოდის კულტურის სფეროში და კულტურულ მემკვიდრეობას და შესაბამისად ჩვენი მუზეუმის გაძლიერება პირდაპირ პროპორციულად აისახება ქვეყანაში სტუმრების რიცხვსა და მათ ინტერესზე. და მესამე უაღრესად მნიშვნელოვანი მიმართულება განათლების, მეცნიერების და კულტურის კომიტეტი მუშაობს ქართულ ისტორიკოსებთან ერთად ერთ ძალიან მნიშვნელოვან საკითხზე. ტურიზმის დასთან ერთად ჩვენ ვართ მომსწრე ეგრეთ წოდებული ისტორიის ფალსიფიკაციის მცდელობების, რაც არაერთ ქვეყანას გამოუვლია. განსაკუთრებით ხშირია, როდესაც სხვადასხვა ქვეყნის ტურისტულ ჯგუფებს თან ახლავთ საკუთარი უშუალოდ კომპანიის გიდები, რომლებიც ბუნებრივია არა კონკრეტული ინტერესით, არამედ de-facto ხშირად არა ზუსტ ინფორმაციის მიწოდება ხდება ჩვენი სტუმრებისთვის და არა მხოლოდ სტუმრებისთვის, საქართველოს მოსახლეობისთვისაც ხშირად. ამდენად ჩვენ დაწყებული გვაქვს მუშაობა საკანონმდებლო ინიციატივაზე, რომელიც როგორც ქართულ, ასევე ინგლისურ ენაზე უზრუნველყოფს სავალდებულო საინფორმაციო და საანოტაციო დაფებს კულტურული მემკვიდრეობის ძეგლებზე. ეს არის მხოლოდ ერთი მიმართულება და სწორედ ამ ახალ ტექნოლოგიების განედვა მუზეუმების მასშტაბით იქნება უაღრესად მნიშვნელოვანი და ამ თვალსაზრისით მეცნიერების იქნება ძალიან საინტერესო იტალიის განათლების გაზიარება. ბუნებრივია არსებობს სხვადასხვა ინიციატივები საკანონმდებლო კუთხით, თუმცა ამ ვორქშოპების სერიის და ნებისმიერი სხვა მიმართულებით, გუშინ ჩვენ ვისაუბრეთ ბატონოჩთან ერთობლივი საგანმანათლებლო პროგრამების ხელშეწყობის თვალსაზრისით, როგორც სამაგისტრო, ასევე მოკლევადიანი სწავლების კუთხით, ბუნებრივია კომიტეტი მზად რომ მაქსიმალური ხელშეწყობა უზრუნველყოფს ამ პროცესის. კიდევ ერთხელ ჩვენს ექსპერტებს მინდა დიდი მადლობა გადავუხადოთ თქვენი გამოცდილება არის უაღრესად შთამბეჭდავი და დარწმუნებული ვარ, რომ დღეს აუდიტორიას ელოდება ერთ-ერთი ყველაზე საინტერესო შინაარსობრივი და ექსპერტიზის თვალსაზრისით უაღრესად არსებითი გამოცდილების გაზიარების საშუალება. დიდი მადლობა.
გამშვიდობის მოგესალმებით ყველას განათლების, მეცნიერების, კულტურის და სპორტის სამინისტროს სახელით განმარტებული ვარ საელჩომ, კაპიტან მარიამ, პროფესორ სპიკერებო. როგორც საზოგადოება, ჩვენთვის ეს არის განსაკუთრებული დღე, ალბათ თუ შეიძლება ადამიანმა იოცნებოს, რომ დილა იწყებოდეს ასე, ალბათ ყოველი დილა რომ იწყებოდეს ასეთი საინტერესო შეხვედრებით, იქნება ნამდვილად ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი ასე ვთქვათ დასაწყისი და საინტერესო დღის და ეს პროცესი, რომელიც მომსწრება ჩვენ ყველანი არის დიდი ასე ვთქვათ მრავალწლიანი პროგრამის ასე ვთქვათ ერთ-ერთი მნიშვნელოვანი კომპონენტი, როგორც აღნიშნა ბატონმა ეროვნულმა კულტურულ მარიამმა, ჩვენ განსაკუთრებულად ვაფასებთ იტალიის საელჩოსთან და ჩვენს კოლეგა ინსტიტუციებთან თანამშრომლობას. მარტო ასე ვთქვათ ის მიმართულება, რომელიც გულისხმობს იტალიური კულტურის წარმოდგენას საქართველოში და საფასურად ქართული კულტურის წარმოდგენას იტალიაში, უკვე ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი შედეგი არის ამ თანამშრომლობის და მეგობრობის. გარდა ამისა, ბუნებრივია ის, რომ ჩვენ არ შემოვიფარგლებით მარტო საგამოფენო ასე ვთქვათ მიმართულებით და ის, რომ გამოცდილების გაზიარება დღეს მსოფლიოში გახლავთ ერთ-ერთი მნიშვნელოვანი პრიორიტეტი, სწორედ იმისათვის, რომ ზიანი იყოს მიდგომა ზოგადად კულტურული მემკვიდრეობის შენარჩუნების, მისი განვითარების და თუნდაც საზოგადოების ცნობიერების ამაღლებისათვის. ჩვენ ძალიან ვაფასებთ იმას, რომ გვაქვს შესაძლებლობა როგორც სამინისტრო მხარი დაუჭიროთ ამ ინიციატივებს, რომელიც უდაოდ გაგრძელდება, როგორც აღინიშნა. ჩვენ განსაკუთრებით იმ ფორმატით და იმ შემადგენლობით, რითაც დღეს სამინისტრო არის წარმოდგენილი, ბუნებრივია ვფიქრობ იმაზე, როგორ შეიძლება უზრუნველყო ყოველდღიურად ის რეალობა, რომ მუზეუმის მიმართ ასე ვთქვათ ის სტერეოტიპური დამოკიდებულება, რომელიც არსებობდა, შეიცვალოს. კერძოდ ჩვენ ალბათ უნდა გადავიდეთ იმ ეპოქიდან, როდესაც მუზეუმში მოდიოდი და განსხვავდა, რომ იქ დახვდება არც თუ ისე კეთილ განწყობილი და უშუალოდ კადრი, რომელიც აგვიგზავნოს ექსპოზიციის მუსეუმის დადებას, ზედმეტ ხმაურს, გადაადგილებას და ასე შემდეგ. ჩვენ შევდივართ იმ ეპოქაში, როდესაც მუზეუმი იცვლის თავის პირვანდელ სახეს. მუზეუმი არის და უდაოდ უნდა იყოს მულტიფუნქციური სივრცე, სადაც წარმოდგენილი იქნება როგორც სამუზეუმო, საექსპოზიციო კომპონენტი, საგანმანათლებლო, რაც ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანია და რა თქმა უნდა სამეცნიერო. და ყოველთვის ამის ძალიან კარგი შემკვრელი არის თანამედროვე ტექნოლოგიები და ბუნებრივი არის სწორედ მუზეუმის ასე ვთქვათ პირველი სიცოცხლის შთაბერებიდან, ანუ პროექტირებიდან დაწყებული, დამთავრებული უკვე მისი ფუნქციონირებით ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი არის, რომ ეს ხედვა იყოს ჩადებული. ვით უმეტეს ისეთი ქვეყნისთვის, როგორც არის საქართველო, რომელიც არ არის განებივრებული მრავალფეროვანი კულტურული ინსტიტუციებით, ანუ ინფრასტრუქტურით, ძეგლები მრავლად გვაქვს, მაგრამ მულტიფუნქციური სივრცეები ამ შემთხვევაში გვაკლია და სწორედ დღევანდელი ჩვენი ასე ვთქვათ სემინარის ერთ-ერთ მიზანსაც წარმოადგენს, სწორედ გავიაზროთ ის თითოეული მკვლელი, რომელიც დათმობილი არის მუზეუმის სივრცეში, როგორ შეიძლება გამოვიყენოთ იმისთვის, რომ მუზეუმი იყოს შემოსავლებზე ორიენტირებული, მუზეუმი იყოს საინტერესო, მუზეუმში იყოს ინტეგრირებული სასწავლო რეჟიმი, სამეცნიერო კვლევებისათვის ხელშეწყობილი გარემო, თანამედროვე ტექნოლოგიების დალეგვის იდეალური ასე ვთქვათ პლატფორმა და რაც თავარია ორიენტირი იმაზე, რომ ის არ იყოს მხოლოდ საქართველოს თვის მორგებული, არამედ ის იყოს მის ინტერნაციონალიზაცია, რაც გულისხმობს მზარდი ტურისტული პოტენციალისთვის შესაბამისი ასე ვთქვათ პირობის შექმნა. ამის ერთ-ერთი ნათელი მაგალითი არის ღამე მუზეუმში, რომელსაც ასე ვთქვათ მთელი მსოფლიო განსაკუთრებით ევროპა ბუნებრივია ძალიან ტრადიციულად უკვე მრავალი წელი აღნიშნავს, მაგრამ საქართველოში 2015 წლიდან რაც დავიწყეთ ამ ღონისძიების ასე ვთქვათ მასშტაბურად განხორციელება, მივახციეთ იმ ციფრს, რომ როდესაც 2015 წლის რეჟიმში ყავდა დაახლოებით 20,000 დამთვალიერებელი ერთ ღამეს, შარშან 2018 წელს უკვე 100,000-ზე მეტი იყო მთელი საქართველოს მასშტაბით ერთ ღამეში მუზეუმში ვიზიტორთა რაოდენობა. სწორედ იმიტომ, რომ მუზეუმებმა აბსოლუტურად სხვა კუთხით შესთავაზეს საზოგადოებას მათი ტრადიციული თუ ახალი ექსპოზიციები, გააცოცხლეს ექსპონატები, შემოიტანეს მუსიკალური კომპონენტები, თეატრალური და ასე შემდეგ. და სწორედ ეს გვაძლევს საფუძველს ვივარაუდოთ, რომ ასე ვთქვათ ძალიან დიდი არის პოტენციალი სამუზეუმო სივრცეში დღევანდელ პერიოდში და მას უდავოდ შეუძლია ძალიან ბევრი ცვლილების კატალიზატორის ფუნქციის შესრულება. მე აღარ შეგაწყენთ ჩემი გამოსვლით, რომ ყველაზე საინტერესო ნაწილი სწორედ ჩემი გამოსვლის შემდეგ იგეგმება. მე უსურვებ ჩვენს ექსპერტებს საინტერესო ასე ვთქვათ თავგადასავლებს საქართველოში და თქვენ საინტერესო სამუშაო დღეს. და დარწმუნებული ვარ, რომ ეს ურთიერთობები მომავალშიც გაგრძელდება და დიდი მადლობა.
I thank both Chair Joshi and Vice Minister Kardishvili. We agreed with the director that we want to listen before to you, and then Director Lokibanidze will give us will give you an overview of where they are and what are the future programs for Georgian museums in Georgia, and to open up a discussion. We have till 1 p.m. We want to close there. Because they have also scheduled, they will see firsthand some interesting sites, not only in Tbilisi but in Georgia. So I will give the floor to the first Desme for Gopion, asking the speakers to stay within 20 minutes. They will be introduced by some presentation videos realized by the National Research Council to give the gist of what they are presenting, but they will use other special effects for videos. Please. The floor.
of any object is the best way to enable a more correct visitor's understanding. But this is not always possible. Museums have their own context, and it's very difficult to make it correspond to the original one. Luckily, technologies could have an interesting role in disseminating contextual information. We can understand the original context of an object, and we have the possibility to learn as much as we can about it. Our technologies can really help about that. The power of technologies is more and more obvious. The more straightforward communication, the possibility to get different kinds of information in a very short time, and the power of images and videos. So Georgian, who we are. So the company was founded in 1952 and is an engineering firm with expertise encompasses planning, design, construction, installation and management. Our main focus is the manufacture of state-of-the-art display cases for a broad range of international museums and other cultural institutions. Copying cases do not merely serve to display and protect exhibit objects, but also provide advanced solutions for preserving them. In the northern Italian artisanal tradition of closely aligned technology-linked specialty fabricators, specifically Georgian harnesses its design engineers and our fabricators to customize our planning solutions according to the specific design, conservation and operational requirements. We have collaborated with some of the world's most prominent museums to display and protect significant cultural icons. The organization of Georgian, so basically we have the headquarters and we work with a network of suppliers that are very specialized in their own fields. So inside the company, we design the display cases according to the drawings done by the architects and the museum. And then we work with very specific suppliers, and once all the pieces are built, they bring all the pieces into the company, and then we have a team of workers that do the assembly of the display cases inside the company. And when the display cases are ready, then we ship them to the museum, and we install them inside the museum. So here we've got different so there are different strengths. So we have personal commitment to any project. We have the personal responsibility of the objects that are presented in the museum. We have a wide experience and a personal understanding of the different needs of the museum. Also, the tradition of Northern Italy for the design and production is really in our genes since 1952. We multi-specialize and have various competences. The staff is formed of architects, engineers, and highly skilled technicians. So we have various experience in engineering and manufacturing, as well as preventive conservation, which is very important for us because we also have the responsibility and liability of the objects that are displayed in our display cases. As the CEO of our company says, if the Mona Lisa cries, we're in trouble. So we invest a lot in research and development in new technologies. For example, all the materials used for the case, like the silicones or the aluminiums, especially because if you have objects inside the case that are maybe wood or textile, then there can be some interaction with the components of the case. So it's important to carry on the researches. So for the services we provide to the museum, so we give them conservation grade display cases. So it's not only 4 pieces of glass and a base, but it's really a technical machine where you have a lighting, you have to control the temperature inside the case. If the museum So to achieve our goals, we collaborate with the CNR and the NASA, for example, and various universities like the Politecnico di Milano, the University of Turin, so they can test our technology, like for example the opening systems. Because when we sell a display case to a museum, first of all it has to be easy to be operated by the museum staff, and it has to last in the time frame of the display case. So, for example, this year we celebrated the 25 years of the display cases in London for the Crown Jewels, and we were happy that after 25 years they're still in place, in use, and operate properly. It's a big sign of pride for the company. So you've seen in the movie and also here, so you can see the various institutions with whom we had the chance to work over the past, let's say, 30 years. The company exists for 60 years, but really focused on museum for the last 30, 40 years. And that's the main institution we had the opportunity to work with. The iconic project, so that's the Tower of London, the Mona Lisa, that's the Département des Arts de l'Islam in the Louvre, in France. This is a new project we just finished in Saudi Arabia. It's the Aturaif, so it's a living museum, and it was commissioned by the Saudi royal family to recreate the village where they're originally from. It's the same. Okay. And at the moment we're finishing the first gallery for the Grand Egyptian Museum, which is a very big project in Cairo, and we're working with them at the moment. As well as the Qatar National Museum, which will be open in the edition. Okay. So our technology. So the technology we use are very important, first of all, to present the collection of the museum. This museum have collections, but they first need to present it to the public, but the artifacts needs also to be protected, and also we insist on the and the preventive conservation, because it's very important. For example, we have the Mona Lisa that was done about 500 years ago. So we had the chance to have it until today, but we need also to pass it to the next generation. So the best way to do this is to create a system that will allow the painting, which is painted on a piece of wood, not to deteriorate too much. We can't stop it, it's a natural process, but we can slow it down as much as possible. And that's how the technology we use in our display cases help the museums. So we have different technologies. So first of all, on the mechanical structural point of view, is to keep the display cases stable, also because it has to resist to shocks or interactions with the public. The composition inside the display cases, different materials we use. We also work with a Japanese company for when we work in countries where they have potential earthquakes, or in cities where, for example, in London they have the tube, the underground that goes into the museum, so it could be some vibration inside the museum. So we have systems that can limit the effects on earthquakes or vibrations. If the vibrations, if it vibrates too much, the object, for example, could fall all the time. So it's something important to take into consideration. Also so we have machines inside the cases for the climate control and the air tightness. So the air tightness is to avoid, the air to enter the case as well as the dust. And the climate control is to compensate the temperature of the museum. For example, if an object needs to be against the temperature, we can control the temperature inside the case, notwithstanding the temperature of the room where it is. Security is very important, obviously. Lighting system, because it's the best way to present the object. So it's a very particular technology. The internet fittings, and after innovation and conservation that I'm going to add a little bit more. Okay. So we also invented a system that we call intelligent or smart display case. So inside the case, there is a computer inside the base, and that can help us to control different parameters of the display case, such as the lighting, the security, the alarm system, the climate control, the temperature, and this can be controlled from outside of the case with a tablet. And with just one tablet, we can control from one display case to a network of display cases inside the museum. So that's what it does. So it monitors, it controls the climate. We can, there's some, I'm not sure, I forgot what it's called. Detector inside the case for to know about the humidity inside the case and the lighting. And what is the future for museums? So we are currently developing a technology that we call hyper-object, and this will basically allow the visitor to have a more to generate points of interest, such as interaction with a smartphone or a tablet. And when the visitors will approach the display case, it will trigger some projections or lighting or different media, and have a different customized experience for the visitor. For instance, by adapting this technology in a museum, it will be possible to create different experience for different visitors. In fact, by planning paths for visitors with different interests, and with different ages, everybody who visits a museum will be able to decide which field is more interesting or appropriate for him, because the display cases can communicate between each other. Furthermore, this enables projections and audiovisual components. This can integrate what a visitor observes, encouraging a more complete knowledge. So that's the idea of the visitor when you arrive in the museum. If you have a special interest in, let's say, for an Egyptian, like, let's say you arrive at the Louvre and they have different galleries, but you really want to focus on the Egyptian. So you can, when you arrive at an object, it will display some information, and can also tell you, the application will tell you where you can see different things similar inside the museum, or if you're in Paris or in the whole country, or it will really create a more custom experience. So the idea of Georgian when we work with museum also is to create a key in hand project museum. So let's say that the museum has a lot of collection but doesn't know how to create a story. So we can help, because we have a team of museologists and curators, to create a path and a direction that we want to give to the museum. I can give an example. Recently, we worked in Kurdistan with the Bahrani family, and they wanted to create a new museum. And so we sent some specialists there, and they told us the story and the tradition of Kurdistan, and we helped them to create a museum. We also have design assist, so they will design assist is really helping the project from the beginning, because The earliest we are in the beginning of the project with the museum, the better we can deliver the perfect museum at the end of the process. And we also have what we call the holistic method, so a project and product development system that combine practice of craftsmanship and modern management tools and experience. So from design to commissioning, so we have a team of designers that will create the showcases that the architect has created. I think we can go a bit now. This is more into details of the prototyping and the way it works until the commissioning of the final product. So to finish, the Copian approach really is to conceive and show the highest overall quality standards and is aimed to completely fulfill the customer expectations.
Enrico Ferraris is curator of the Museo Egizio. We are following in alphabetical order, but that makes sense because as I said, it's a great success story, and Copian also collaborated in it by chance, not by chance, because they do the best ones. And it was, as I said, a 5-year long refurbish, doubling the spaces of display and doubling the visitors. So please.
express my gratitude on behalf of my director, Christian Greco, and my colleagues, my gratitude to His Excellency, the Italian Ambassador in Georgia, Antonio Bartoli, and the local authorities for the kind invitation. The title of my speech is Reinventing a Museum, a Technological Renaissance, and basically it's a hint about a project that actually we started 4 years ago. In 2015 we ended actually the complete renovation of the museum, the Egyptian museum, thanks to a financial commitment of 50 million euro, 5 years of work. And it was a renovation of all the building and also the permanent exhibition. And in April 2015 we opened the museum. At the same time we launched a research program based on archaeometry, and I'm glad to say that after 4 years of work we are about to make a sort of statement next March, when we will open a new temporary exhibition titled Invisible Archaeology, that it's a sort of a first statement about the role archaeometry has in Museo Egizio. Actually, the project is centered on the collaboration between Egyptology and the natural sciences. Especially it's centered on how Museo Egizio is deploying natural sciences in order to study the collection. Scientific investigations actually enable us to reach information that normally would be otherwise inaccessible, or we could say invisible. And these information actually are so important because they allow researchers to fill the gaps about what we know about the biography, the history of each object. And the biography of an object is something crucial, because it's like when you are in front of your doctor and before he's taking care of you, he needs to know your medical history. So for what concerns the preservation of an object, it's the same. The biography of an object is quite important. So today I want to share with you I will be a sort of a curator also for you today, visiting virtually, having a preview of the exhibition. So basically the biography of object is the center of this idea, and it's a sort of travel from the visible information to the invisible information and back. The first part, the travel from visible to invisible, is thanks to archaeometry, obviously. And the second part, so the getting back to the visible dimension, is thanks to restoration, because that is the moment when, thanks to the information we got through the archaeometry, we can intervene in and perform restoration and conservative strategies on our objects. From another point of view, the first part of the path is also connected with the first, what we could say, the first and the second life of an object. I mean, the first life is obviously the time from the first production of an object to the last abandon of an object, and then the second life is the moment when the object is rediscovered in an archaeological site. Since that moment, that object is considered an archaeological artifact. So, in some way, starts a new life. As you can imagine, and probably you are living exactly this feeling, it's a difficult matter to engage public with the so-called this idea of biography of objects. So, the first part of the exhibition is devoted to this idea, the biography of object, and we try to make the visitors more acquainted with this idea showing that biography of object is not something limited to archaeological artifacts, but it's an approach you could have also with daily life objects. So we display normal objects from contemporary time in order to show how the passage of time means the evolution of culture can influence actually our perception of an object or can influence physically an object. So just a few examples, like for instance an oil lamp, so an object can evolve. So an oil lamp can be transformed, and this is the case on the right, in an electric one, so an electric abajur. Or maybe another object, this is a bullet case from the First World War that was transformed in a flower pot and decorated. A more radical transformation is when just you can see just the materiality of an object. Here we have a toy made from condensed milk tin, and actually here you had some information about the original object that produced this car, thanks to the information, we can say, on the materiality. But time can also produce a change in the meaning of an object. So, for instance, this is a video game very popular in the 80s, and by the way, I have one of that, and it will be in the exhibition. But after just one generation, you can find this video game. It's good for a museum. Here is we have different museums devoted to arcade. And this is a crucial example to understand this passage from the first to the second life. One generation is, in modern time, is enough to have this change. Transferred in archaeology, the place where happens this change for an archaeological artifact is the archaeological site. So, yes, in the archaeological context, you have two overlapping moments. So the first life, the abandon, and then the rediscovery. The archaeological context, so, is the main topic of the first room in the exhibition. I have just rendering because today, in these days, we are mounting the exhibition. In the first room, we have two projections on the walls. Devoted to the technology that allows us to maintain all the information in the archaeological context. You know that the archaeological process is supposed to remove every layers in order to continue the research. So it's like a crime scene. You know, you have to take all the details of the crime scene before removing all the stuff. And the technology we wanted to stress out, we wanted to highlight in this room, obviously, is photography. Starting from 19th century, Italian archaeological mission and many other archaeological missions in Egypt started to use photography. So we will exhibit the camera Italian archaeological mission used at the beginning of 19th century. But we will show the evolution of photography in modern times. So photography now is called photogrammetry. And the photogrammetry is a really intriguing tool that allows us to perform not just an image of a site, but to implement the image with a lot of details at the level that after a while we can recreate digitally the archaeological context that we have removed maybe 1 year before. This is, for instance, a rendering from the archaeological mission, the expedition of last year. So it's the final rendering, obviously, and that is a rendering for the general public. But here we are the opportunity to preserve a lot of information, because an archaeological site is preserve a real complexity of data. So let's go to the next section of the exhibition, so is based on the archaeometry. So here the general public is involved in the study of the pictorial layers. And we start with a corner that is prepared thanks to the MIT interest. And so we just give our visitors a basic knowledge about the chemical origin of the colors. So you have different columns with different colors developed by ancient Egyptian. The last one is the famous blue Egyptian, the Egyptian blue, that is the first color artificially made. And this is absolutely crucial. It's a knowledge absolutely crucial to understand what we call the so-called multispectral analysis that basically is performed on this painted box from the intertomb of the great root of the American discovered in 1906. In this area, we developed the possibility, we show our visitors the possibility to study individual objects starting from the carpentry to the pictorial layers. So we have different parts of the box, and on the right, a screen is showing all the possible analysis we perform on the object. This is the painted box, it's a marvelous one. And here the visitors apprehend that beside the visible light, the visible information we have seen till now, we have also other frequency of the light that can be detected with a lot of information. UV, for instance, it's important for restorers to understand if we have previous restoration or if we have organic material on the box. And this is crucial because if you are a restorer, you have to know the material you are working on. VIL, it's just a type of infrared analysis. It can detect blue Egyptian blue. You have to understand that before the invention of VIL, in order to understand if you have blue Egyptian blue, you have to take some samples. So you have to take a piece of material from the archaeological artifacts. Thanks to the VIL, you just need a camera, you get a shot, and you have the information. And this is a non-invasive strategy in analysis we are performing and we are selecting. And finally, we have the infrared. Infrared is absolutely fantastic for the public because infrared allows us to understand if there were some change of minds in the artisan. For instance, here the flower was originally drawn in this way with some other fruits. Here where the artisan probably changed his idea. This is the real one. This is a previous one that now is covered by the yellow paints. And here another one. And here is also a sort of bird. Probably this box was intended to be a representation of Osiris and not to the owner of the tomb. And this is my favorite because it's the cutting-edge technology performed by CNR, the Landis laboratory from Catania. It's the Macro XRF. Macro XRF, it's a fantastic tool that basically maps the chemical elements on a painted surface as a scanner. That means that you can filter different elements. The Macro XRF is detecting individually. So here we have the rendering of the arsenicum. In white you have the information. Here is the arsenicum. Or the iron for the red. Or the copper for the blue or for the green. And when you have the doubt about it, you can use VIL just to be sure if it's red or green. And this is not so obvious because after a while, after a millennium, the blue and the green color tended to be darker. So it's difficult to understand with naked eye if you are green or blue in front of you. But Macro XRF can also combine different filters attributing false color in order to have a complete map. So here we have we summarize copper, iron, arsenicum, and during an analysis we discovered seriously, it was just serendipity because we weren't looking for, this information, we discover that the artisan used 2 different legs on the same decoration. We don't know exactly why, but in green you can see a black based on manganese oxide and not the normal carbon black we used to find on Egyptian decoration. And if you see the type where he used this type of blacks are dots, tiny lines, hieroglyphs. So there were probably a mechanical property this ink had, but at the moment we are not so sure about the properties. So we will try to reproduce the 2 different blacks in order to test them. And concerning public engagement and biography of an object, you are in front of a piece of history completely invisible until now, because now we have the technology to see information that were embodied in the piece, in the box, but just technology allows us today to reach this information. And on another box, and this is storytelling, you see just that line. So that line actually is a hieroglyph. And that hieroglyphs change an adjective from a masculine to feminine. And actually it's an emendation. So someone, probably the same artisan using this type of ink, used his ink just to amend a text that was on another box. And here we have the gesture of an artisan. So, in the next part of the section that is devoted to archaeometry, we continue with radiology, obviously. It's a more classical information. You know that at the beginning of the 20th century, the study of the mummy were performed just unwrapping them, so destroying actually in a public execution of the mummy. And thanks to the invention of X-rays at the end of the 19th century, but actually the crucial moment was in the 60s of the 20th century when they invented the portable X-rays. So the X-rays came into the museum, and at that time we performed at Museo Egizio the first X-rays on our mummies, and then in the 90s we continue with CT scan. So we will show our visitors the CT scans in normal size of a kind merit that are the wife and husband from this intact tomb we discovered in 1906, one of the most important private tombs discovered in Egypt. And at the end of the room we will exhibit the results of our investigation on the mummy, because we recognize the amulets, just not taking out the amulets like at the beginning of the 20th century, but just thanks to the X-rays. Just a quick view. These are just examples. Okay, these are examples to make you aware about the type of jewelry you are seeing in the X-rays. Okay, and this is quite interesting because this is a bracelet. This is a bracelet, but the X-rays, you can see that there are parts that are apparently lacking. Actually, they are just invisible to X-rays because are probably made in lapis lazuli, that is a material that is lacking heavy metals. So X-rays is not capable to detect it. Thanks to the CT scan and the high resolution CT scans, we can also produce 3D models and we can also print them. So in the exhibition we will show how the improving of technology allows us to perform a more ethical study of the mummy and to perform also a digital unwrapping and a printing and that virtually will allow us to take out the amulets. The rest of the room is devoted also to the radiology performed on animals' mummies, because lastly, many necropolis of animal mummies in Egypt were discovered, so there's a lot of data we can study. And lastly, just one example from the restoration area. it was also on the movie. It is interesting because we wanted to engage our visitors with a standard idea about restoration. So restoration doesn't always mean that you have to restore an object exactly like it was in the origin. Firstly, you have to understand the object and the possible other layer of history the object accumulated on it during the time. And that's the case of the papyrus, the patchwork papyrus we showed in the movie. And that it's a restoration. It was restored in the 19th century. They filled the gaps on the papyrus using fragments from other papyri, ancient papyri, and they glued on it. So they are now part of the history of conservation of that papyrus. So just 1 minute to show you the case.
Illustrated literary and magical nature, used as patches to fill in the gaps in the funeral papyri and reinforce them. Most of these reused fragments date back to the Ramessid era, 1190-1070 BC. They are very similar in content and spelling to the thousands of fragments stored in cardboard folders. We can therefore assume that they are part of the corpus of the Deir el-Medina manuscript. These patches might have been put in by antiquity merchants in London to increase the papyrus value, since it is easier to sell a complete roll than one full roll. It is, however, more likely that these additions were made here at the Egyptian Museum in the 19th century. This is reinforced by the fact that patchwork papyrus accounts do not exist in the collection of the British Museum, Louvre, Leiden or Berlin. Had this restoration been performed in Egypt, we would expect to find similarly treated papyrus in other European collections of Egyptian antiquities. The great collectors of the early 19th century, whom the collections of great European museums were formed, bought their antiquities mostly from the same vendors in the Theban region. So we have some funeral papyri restored with fragments of other manuscripts from other periods. How will we deal with this peculiar situation? Each fragment will be recorded in the database with all its metadata. In hopes this will one day allow us to virtually rejoin them with the original documents they came from. Ancient restorations are part of the biography of the object too, and may therefore deserve being preserved as historical evidence.
So finally, the last room. It's my favorite actually because it's at the end of the path about restoration. We evaluate the impact of digital tools as a sort of a survival strategy, a new survival strategy for the objects. In the room we'll have a 3D print of a coffin, 2 meter and 40 centimeter coffin that we will use. This is just a model like this. And we will perform video mapping on it in order to, as a sort of time lapse, to summarize the procedure, the production of the coffin, starting from the carpentry and then the different layers for the decoration. At the same time, 2 projections on the walls will analyze the different aspects of the carpentry and the paintings in details in order to show the visitors what we understood thanks to the analysis about the biography of this specific coffin. This is finally also a hint about the controversial debate about digital versus material, copy versus original. In Museo Egizio we believe that actually this is a badly formulated problem. We believe that digital strategy and a 3D model, digital model, can be a sort of a repository because if we perform preservation, we try to maintain and conserve original object. At the same time, we have the opportunity to renovate continuously all the data about the analysis we perform on the object. And this is a sort of a ghost of the object that allows us to possibly to study the material, to test the material. For instance, in the gallery of coffin, we test virtually the material in order to understand if we were able to put the coffin vertically or horizontally. So we have different aspects in the 3D model, digital model, that can assist the knowledge and the preservation of an object. And this is what in Museo Egizio we believe about the mission also of a museum, because collaborating with natural sciences, it's not only an opportunity for Egyptologists to have a wide perception of ancient material culture of ancient Egypt, but it's also a strategy that allows us to deliver knowledge and the collection to the future generation. Thank you so much.
Mr. Ferraris, for this really fascinating presentation. You walk us through the invisible. So we saw how apparently simple case can be a computer at the same time protecting the object and connecting the object with the visitors. So we have seen like a museum can make the invisible visible, and let's see how an architect can make beauty even more visible through the work. I give the floor to Marco Magni, a cabinet that, as I said, designed more than 40 museums, 60 temporary exhibitions, but also theaters, libraries, and urban projects. And please, the floor is yours.
Good morning to everybody, and thank you to Ambassador Bartali for inviting us and for the National Museum to organize these interesting presentations. So I am an architect. I will show something of a logo, but let's start from the beginning. Thank you. Why are we here? Why are we talking about museums? Why are museums become one of the most important institutions in European towns and societies? I think the answer is complex, and I will try only to answer to some parts of it. One reason is that because museums were able to change more than different institutions. Museums changed their organization, their way to approach life, antiquities, history, and in particular their way to interact with the public. Public is now the real center of museums, or at least the relationships which are created between the artworks and the public, the audience, are at the center of the new museum. I will now read you a short passage I wrote a few weeks ago, the museum we believe in. The type of museum we believe in is a place of knowledge and exchange, development, cultural integration, education, study and social interaction. The museum must be something unique in order to trigger interaction between the visitor, the place and the artworks. Such interaction is the very thing that enables the visitor to get deeply involved so as to turn a collective cultural heritage into a personal experience. Museography is an exercise in mediation between different places, people and artworks. Museography allows us to tell a story by means of exhibition design based on a cultural and educational project. Thus it is a complex subject involving sensitivity, taste, and a sense of measure integrated with art, history, literature, architecture, design, graphics, photography, scenography, multimedia, advertising, and many other disciplines. Nowadays, the interpretation of the museum needs to combine conservation and preservation with many different functional requirements, but also to cope with the increasing expectations from a never more demanding audience. Today, the audience is an active part of an exhibition and no longer an external variable as it used to be. Human beings are actually at the very center of the new museum. So I will now show you some experiences of my career as an architect, mainly devoted to cultural heritage, not only museum but many of them. In our work we have approached something like 40 projects of museums. 40 have been realized in many temporary exhibitions. So we started 30 years ago, and we started with very small occasions in Italy, and slowly we passed to bigger and more important museums. We passed from ethnography to art, from archaeology to fashion, and we really coped with a lot of different subjects. The museum I will show you is an important museum in Florence, in a very specific situation. This is the complex of the cathedral, which was built in the 13th century to contain all the people of Florence, and together with the baptistry, the bell tower by Giotto, and the cupola by Brunelleschi, it is a unique complex, architectural and civic institution. So now, a few years ago, in 2015, we completed the work of refurbishment of the whole, doubling the surface of its museum. It's a museum which is specifically linked to what you are seeing, the monumental asset of the square, the cathedral, and the baptistry in particular. And it is a museum which talks about different stories, and mainly the history of Renaissance and this history of medieval age in a town like Florence, which is a very little town but was very important for a very narrow period. So in a way, Italian experience is somehow comparable to the Georgian ones. We are a country which has a great deepness of stratification, cultural stratifications, starting with peoples which inhabited Italy before the Romans and the Etruscans, and then the classical period, and then a strong Middle Age which flourished into the Renaissance. And here you see one of the fruits of architecture in this period. It's a late Roman building which was the first to be the late medieval buildings in Florence, full of classical inspiration and connections. The baptistry and the church, which was transformed through the ages, was established in 13th century and then became something different through the centuries. This is our museum, back of the church, back of the cathedral, and as you can see, it's an historical building. The museum was was established at the end of 19th century, and what we have done is to double its surface and to refurbish the whole. So we worked on two levels, the architectural level and the exhibition design level, including lighting design, graphic design, and multimedia design. The museum is a complex machine. As you know, the exposition is only one part of this machine. In this case, we have 7,000 square meters, and 40% is coincident to the exposition which is open to the public. Half of it is deposit, organization, and other things which are not less important. This was the hall before the interventions. It was a deposit. It had been a theater before, and we used this idea of it as a theater to transform it into a new theater of architecture. You see, it was quite difficult to work in this context, but in a certain way, we believed that our work had to face not only the contemporary, but also the past, because it's the fruit of something which is started 7 centuries ago. And this is the entrance. This is a long passage which was the way to the theater, where the visitor meets a long list of names. They are the names of the artists which, from the Middle Age to the Renaissance, worked on this project. They include names like Michelangelo, Leonardo, Brunelleschi, and Lorenzo Ghiberti, and all the many more important artists of the Italian Renaissance. So we played on this and made an installation which the visitor approaches in a different way. And through a gallery which is dedicated to the old sculpture, the visitor arrives to the very center of the museum, where the old theater was. Here we try to represent a moment which corresponds to the recreation of the external of the facade of the church in front of the baptistry. In fact, all the artworks in this room come from that specific place, the church and the baptistry. You can see on the left side the recreation of the medieval facade of the temple, of the cathedral. And this is something very difficult and very important we try to achieve. There is a very important story about this creation. I will tell you about it later. This is in front of the church, the other wall. This is a render. And it shows the translation into contemporary architecture of the baptistry walls, where the real baptistry gates are guessed. This is the first Ghiberti, and here we have a special Dopion case to host this special artifact. Its creation was the fruit of 20 years of work of an artisan and artist from Florence, and the restoration lasted 27 years. A few years were necessary to conceive and to design and to realize this case, which looks almost transparent. You don't see it. But now the gate is inside a special case which controls the temperature and the humidity, which is very low to prevent oxidation of the original golden surface. And there is an electric key which can move the door up and on, find the right position and the right connection for the lighting. And this is the cathedral. The Cathedral of Florence has, as I told you, a very particular story, which was difficult to tell. We did it through different media. We tried to make film and multimedia installation to introduce this realization. And here you see the red small church which was before the cathedral. And then the cathedral was created in 1296. Its facade, made by Arnolfo di Cambio, was not finished. Arnolfo died at the beginning of 14th century, and they had realized only the first part, the basement. Time passed, and Renaissance arrived, but the church was not completed in its facade and its cupola. So the Medici family and the architect Buontalenti in 1587 decided to destroy the facade. They didn't like it anymore. It was difficult to complete in a different epoch. So they destroyed it. But before doing that, they made a sort of final representation of how it was in 1587. So this is a drawing which was at the basis of our reconstruction. And this is a picture when in the 19th century the church was taken into a photograph without any ornaments. What you see now is the result of a competition at the end of the 19th century when Florence was the capital of Italy and the new facade was drawn according to traditional but also style which was in the end. What we made was a research. We made a survey using 3D system and laser scanner. We found the real dimensions and real axis of the existing fabric, existing building beyond the facade, the present facade, and we had the rest of some columns and parts which were found in another place under the cathedral, which belonged to the real facade and were found 40 years ago. So this was a render of this sort of philological reconstruction. Of course, it's not a fully scientific, it is a sort of architectural model which helps to give you an idea of how the facade was made without its decorations and its finishings. There is a huge structure in metal, and in front of the structure you can see the phases of the preparation. There is a resin made with alabaster powder and different materials. These are the real fragments, and this is the facade we built. And it's amazing how this space became the very center of the museum, where the visitors, now you see pictures where there are no visitors, but where the visitors really walk inside the ages and times and stop and look different periods and different situations. And in particular the recreation of the facade, where the real statues which were conserved are put in their original positions. So it's important to understand how statues were conceived. Look at these objects not only from a scientific point of view in a modern way, but also to appreciate the way they were conceived, because they were done just before perspective was reintroduced in Renaissance. So they are conceived to be seen in their particular positions. I'll show you other parts of the museum. This is a gallery which brings to the Maddalena by Donatello. The Maddalena faces the artwork by Michelangelo, which is the Pietà, which he made when he was 70 years old, just before Pietà Rondanini. And also here, architecture is very part of the exhibitions. Michelangelo designed this chapel to be its final tomb. And so we recreated through modern architecture something which resembled and has the intensity of a funerary chapel, interpreting the materials, interpreting the times in a contemporary way. Architecture is very present in these museums. It's a gift that we would not to abandon in the future museums. When you work on a museum design, you have many elements, as I said before, but architecture is the first one of them. Variation in a museum is fundamental to achieve this approach to the visitor, to create a relationship between the artworks and the visitor itself. So, for example, in this gallery we expose all the statues coming from the bell tower of Giotto. These were reliefs showing the invention of astronomy, the creation of agriculture, of different human activities and ecological virtues. This is architecture. And besides this, we recreated a new room which is dedicated to the cupola by Brunelleschi, which was built only later, in the Renaissance period. We have models, they are new models, and we have projections beyond the models. This is the Lanterna's 1-to-6 model. It's made in wood. In the new museum of the future, we don't have to abandon all the traditional things which take part in our museum experience. We have to put together different systems, different traditions, different media to create a really innovative museum. This is the work inside, which has been treated as an artwork itself. And this is a look cut in the roof which shows the real cupola behind the museum. Other cases by Gopion. And you can see how these elements become part of the architecture of the museum very easily, because they have a minimal attitude to be inserted in the architecture. Now I will show you something a little bit different. Some other works we had the pleasure to work on, and they are regarding different experiences in other countries and other parts of Europe. But let's say something about words. In museum lexicon, words such as communication, information, orientation, accessibility is as relevant as the important things concerning the artworks and the exhibit themselves. A visit to a museum is often a struggle between curiosity, habit, standardization, amazement, interest, wariness, and curiosity again. The result of a visit partly depends on the way every moment is overcome and carried on into the experience of the exhibition trail. So the exhibition trail of a museum or a contemporary exhibition is no longer arranged as a long continuous snake with a head and a tail, but rather as a series of segments and paragraphs which provide partial reading and yet constitute a global plot. The importance of variation is fundamental to the creation of museums. This is a military hospital in Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, which is now transformed into a new museum dedicated to Ottoman arts. And here it's important, in this very specific situation, to introduce the visitor into a different world. The visitor many times is not educated in many of the arguments she will see, and this is a sort of introduction to it. These are rooms which are created and dedicated to the type of objects which the visitor meets. We do not believe in an abstract museum. Every museum has to be a site-specific museum, and every situation has to be built starting from the points which are in the territory, in the culture of the site, of the place, of the town. So here we coped with the traditional Islamic architecture to create rooms which gives the space to the exhibition design. And of course, we have different experiences in Italy. This is Museo dell'Opera di Pisa, with the tower standing beside the museum, and we also have breasts of different elements, including some Islamic elements which are part of the cathedral nowadays and were brought from the Eastern world in the 13th and 14th century. So museums are often stories about connections, about traveling, about exchanges in culture. And this is very important and very important to give to the visitor nowadays, in times when these changes are not always considered as positive as they were in the past. The images you see now are not photographs, they are renders. We used to create this kind of drawings. We actually start from the very first handmade sketches I made many times, and then we develop a system of renderings which creates a model where the artworks are located and which gives a proper idea to the curators and to the people involved in the creation of the museum before the museum exists. So, for example, Pisa will be opening in the end of this year, but now if you go to the museum, nothing is there, only some cases which are arriving. This is another very important experience we are now running in Paris. We won an international competition for the National Library. The National Library will guest some parts of showing the collection, which is an extraordinary collection. They have 37 million objects, including rare books, jewels, coins, classical vases, and so on. And we had to cope with the spirit of this place to suggest a different place and a different situation for the visitor. The visitor here meets different situations because the exposition is going to change from every 3 months. So there are special needs for this kind of exposition, but we tried to integrate our objects in a vision of the site itself. And as you see, we played with architecture. Architecture is always an added value to the museum. We don't have to cancel it. We have to take into account and to use it with light, with colors, to introduce vibrations and variations in the expositive tray. The last one is a project we are now concluding in Oslo. It is 4 years of project. We started in 2016, and this is considered to be the biggest and more important museum of Scandinavia. They actually went on building this site, which is an operation of 800 million euros, and unluckily we make only a little part of it, because we are working on the exhibition design, but which is a big story anyway, because there are 10,000 square meters of rooms, and there are 100 rooms dedicated to different moments of their culture. We have applied arts, modern design, ancient art, classical art, Norwegian art, of course, and the monks' work are here, mainly most of the prestigious ones, and then a contemporary museum too. You see, these are the sketches we start from, and normally we start from here and then we go on with different media and different developments, such as this render which shows the new configuration for the monk room. And in this museum we really faced another dimension of facing the public and the audience. Here we work with a group of 70 curators, divided in 17 teams. In every team we have experts for mediation and mediation, and also for didactics, education, and it's very interesting to use different approaches of curators, conservators, architects, because all of us form a team. The museum is a collective realization. It's one of the most complex ones of our societies. That's why we have to work and we have to hope it is in good hands. Thank you very much.
Now the human being remains at the center of the scene. Let's understand how this is possible without technologies prevailing over the beneficiary, the main beneficiary of all these. So I'm glad to give the floor to Alfonsina Pagano that will talk about the interaction between computer technology and human beings. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. On behalf of my head department and my director, I really thank you for this invitation. I come from Rome, from the Italian National Research Council. Specifically, I belong to the Institute of Technology Applied to Cultural Heritage. I will shortly introduce myself and my team in this video, and then I will talk about the point of view of users. I'm the last presenter, so I will try to summarize, let's see, and I will present you a more romantic view of museums and virtual museums. I hope you will appreciate it. Actually, I will tell you something on the other side of the river. So, on behalf of users, on the public, on the general audience of museums. Remember that museums are social places where things happen and a sort of communication needs to happen, otherwise there will be no transfer of knowledge. Museums are open to people, are for people, and are made of people, because where we store in the museums are part of our legacy. They are made by individuals with their tradition, with their everyday life, with their belief and their context of living. So what we present in museum is something that needs to be transferred to the visitors as something in which they can reflect into. Otherwise, understanding and love for our cultural heritage will not really happen indeed. So what I'm going to present you now are these 4 points. The first thing is the importance of working together, of the multidisciplinarity of the research. I come from a research institute, but not only as a research institute. It's really important to merge together the disciplines, otherwise we'll always work on a separate, let's say, planet without really sharing the knowledge and bettering the construction of a museum or a virtual museums. The second point is the importance of the users, because sometimes technology and content are seen as enemies, but it is not. As Enrico was saying, there's a way to merge together the two parties working together in order to better the knowledge of the past. And then how to design virtual museum. This can be done only if we ask people how really they experience the museums. It's, pardon for the, let's say, comparison, it's like making a cake. You are a chef, and you really feel the ingredient very carefully, but you cannot say that it works and it is very, let's say, very tasty if somebody else tells you. So the same goes for museums. You need to ask people if they really liked your work and your exposition. And then our case studies. So, what we do? As you see from the video, we try to cover several stages, because as a research institute we have to work on the field. We made applied research, so we work on the field. We have 2 drones, we go on the excavation, and we made photogrammetry, GPS, laser scanning activities in order to understand which is the context. And then we practically create and develop the application that is generally addressed for a specific museums or cultural heritage site, let's say Pompeii or the Imperial Foreign Museum. Then, in parallel, we try to set up, because we are a research institute, educational activity. In all our fieldwork, we involve always students or people that comes from abroad university that need to, let's say, stress this connection with the field work. And that's why we organize schools, interactive program, workshop, conference, and so on. And then the dissemination, we work on a communication level, so everything that we develop is for a specific place, so nobody remains in the laboratory, is applied research. Obviously, we work as a public institution with the Minister of Culture. Especially this year, we are starting to work together to define the guidelines for future museums. We work for the European Commission in order to, let's say, set up the important infrastructure for the development of the cultural heritage, especially in local places. And then for specific teams, this years, but also last years, we worked with private industries about, for example, the gamification, the gaming, about serious game. So this is our chain of work: field acquisition, 3D reconstruction, 3D modeling, and then on the other side, but not really on the other side, the software development, people caring about the content and obviously the point of view of the user, so what we want to convey to them, and then user evaluation, that is actually me. I'm the person who stalks people in museums. I spend the majority of the time not in laboratory, but between people. As also Marco was saying before, people that come to the museums are not always experts, are common people that want to enjoy and to know the other culture or their own culture. So we have to put in mind every time these things. It's not automatic that our message will be well conveyed to the others. We need to really stress specific unit of information in order to make sure that this message arrives. So our vision starts from two assumptions. Museums, as I was saying, are cultural spaces, and virtual museums, so the digital entities of museums that is not a replacement of the original one, is something that can be associated, can be an augmentation or an additional service to the real museums, can really help user understanding what it is beyond the museum subject and the cultural heritage in general. People need to make that experience when they arrive in the cultural heritage site or museums. For experience, we mean several things. Experience, your own experience when you visit a museum or you visit a city, a square, a monument, is influenced by several things. Experience can be influenced by the type of environment. You are in an open area, you are in a closed environment, you need to follow a specific path, or you are free to go wherever you want. From the device, you have, I don't know, audio guide, or you can have a mobile phone that helps you to guide you throughout the path, or you have anything, or you have a paper-based guide. So all these things really influence your own judgment and your own, let's say, appreciation at the end of the experience. And again, the way of interaction and the content. So what I will try to transmit today is that sometimes we start from the assumption that technology is the key, and it is a possible solution, but you have to keep in mind that content is the key. The message you want to convey. Technology is just a way through to say something. So everything can change on technology, but the most important issue is the research behind. So again, when we have to start from the content, and to start from the content means that you have to tell people what that object represents. Which is the story behind that object. That's what we actually try to do every time, because we work in a group very variegated, also with museums curators, ICT experts, anthropologists, and it is it's a pleasure to discover with them which is the story behind the museum object. So this kind of highlights, inner stories, funny fact that sometimes stays behind the object, really involve people and make really love them. After more or less 10 years of evaluation, I've been talked to a huge number of people all over Europe. What I can say up to now is this. It is very, at least for the scenario, there are very crucial points. So when you design a digital product, and then I will show you some of them, you need always to start from the user, from their needs. Users are different. If you refer to children, you have to adopt a special language and a special content. If you address your communication to experts, everything's changed again. So there is not a unique solution. It can be different solution, but it always starts to user and their needs. And then the content, of course. We are not developing, at least as CNR, something that is a replica of what the museums already exposed to people. We are, let's say, giving to museums the chance to see the same things from another point of view, a sort of integration. Obviously, contextualize the technology. Technology don't need to be seen as something separated in the museums, but need to be integrated along the visit path, because otherwise people will always recognize technology as something aside and not really blending with the exposition visit path. And then evaluate, ask people, conduct evaluation also in the meantime, not only in the final release of the product, but also before in your laboratory with your families, with your friends, in order to grab the first impression. There's not always the money to do that, because the majority of the time you evaluate a product when it's finished. And then when you discover that something doesn't work, you cannot really coming back because you have finished the money. But The European Commission from 2017 is really pushing this issue. They are giving money that you can't spend before, but you need to spend it specifically for these changings after, in order to create an iterative process of evaluation. Our case studies. We actually, as a group, we evolved in 15 years, more or less. I've been in the seminar since 10 years, so I can just speak about this period. We worked on natural interaction, specifically on Kinect, on lip motion, on devices that really help people have a communication with technology in a more natural way. We were convinced that not giving instruction to people, not giving anything to read would really help them to come closer to the reconstruction, the 3D reconstruction, the story of that object, and somehow it works. The first experimentation is in 2013. It's the city of Bologna. We reconstructed the city of Bologna, but from the point of view of the past. So it was a serious game. User was traveling with the natural interaction in the area of Bologna, free, just following this streamline left by the avatars all along the city. So the user can discover specific point of the city, and afterwards, the end of the game, it's the future vision of Bologna for the character of the serious game, that it is the actual city of Bologna. It is completely explorable with the natural interaction, only with the gesture of your hands. So with the direction of your hands, you can walk through and navigate the city. The second was under the DIMAS project, a very big project, European project on virtual museums. We developed Admotu. It was a serious game, again. The subject was the Imperial Forum. The character, always with the hand gesture, selected specific object from a garderobe, let's say a Roman garderobe, and each object was the scenario of exploration. It was a treasure hunt. This application has been located in 4 cities contemporary, in Amsterdam, in Alexandria of Egypt, in Biblioteca Alessandrina, in Sarajevo, and then in Italy. And we evaluated all these countries with the same application. At the end, after 4 years of evaluation, I can say to you that, as I was saying also before, in Italy really works well, but people are not very open to technology, because there's a sort of shyness, a sort of fear of putting in the middle of a stage and moving your hands and everybody watching. In the north of Europe, instead, this application was a wow, because nobody cares. They are really accustomed to such kind of devices. In Alexandria of Egypt, we had other kind of problem, for example, not taking into account the way the woman dresses, for example, really was a limitation, because we never thought about that probably women cannot really move their hands freely because they have their long dress. So making evaluation not really helps you adjusting little things, but also making clear that the population is not always the same. So when you have, if you are a client and you want to buy my application, you have to know that if you put my application in a place in the north of Europe, probably it will really work at the best. But if you place it in another context of fruition, probably it will not work. So it's not a single solution, it's a possible solution for your own context. And then the Tiber River Valley Museum. So first, you have seen the first example on the city. The second example on the Imperial Forest, so a small archaeological area. This is a quite huge project, 4-year national project. It's about the Tiber River Valley. We reconstructed all the Tiber River Valley from the prehistoric until the Republican age. We divided the exploration, the storytelling, in 4 scenarios. The first one, you are a bird, you can fly over the Tiber Valley. the Tiber River Valley. The second scenario, you are a fish, you can water under the river in order to discover what it is inside. Obviously, it was something in our imagination, just a pretext to tell the story of what was along the river. And the other two scenarios was focused on the specific archaeological site, Lucus Feronius and Villa of Volusi, two Roman city and a Roman villa. So again, here you have natural interaction, you have the colored dot on the floor, you have to move on the colored dot in order to explore this scenario. If you can imagine, I mean, the blue one is the flight, the azul is the under the river, and the other one at the archaeological site. This is, I didn't actually say that when we arrive to that point, we always start from this point. We survey the context. We try to figure out which will be the best communication project for that context. And then from that, we start creating the storytelling. In parallel, the software developer start programming and coding night and day. And in the end, I arrive, and I'm the person who is generally scares my colleagues, because I'm the person who has to tell him if it works or if it doesn't. So I'm a very in-between sometimes. This is some scenario. And then arrive to the recent experimentation. We started this flow of working on a holographic showcase because really with the natural interaction we brought the people in the middle of experiencing the past. But it was not sufficient because still the natural interaction is something apart from the real museum's object. So with holography we tried, and we are still researching on this, trying to merge these two words, the real object and the digital copies. So we developed this kind of structure. It was the subject of a European project, and it is still ongoing. It's the CEMEC project, Connecting Early Medieval Age Collection. It's a traveling exhibition. Now it's in Bonn, and in a couple of months will be in Bruxelles' final destination. It's obviously an exhibition putting together 5 small museums, putting together also the object, creating an exhibition, really merging together the same culture but from different countries. And for that exhibition we created this kind of structure. We made story on 2 objects. The first one is the Cunagota's work coming from the National Hungarian Museum of Budapest. It's an hour's work. The curators want to reconstruct the story of these words because the golden sheet applied to these words was not the original one, but they were part of an original casket that was planted by the Avars to the Byzantines. So if you see this word, you can read it on a paper like this, and you cannot not really fix in mind the story, but if you see something, it's different. If you see something, you can better remember it, and you can bring it on a piece of knowledge that probably if you read thousands of panels, you can't. The second example is the Mytilene treasure. It's a treasure found in Mytilene in the island of Kratigos in Greece. Again, we created a storytelling. It was something different because for the Cunagota we created something in the 2D graphics, but for the Mytilene we used real actors on a green screen, and we recreated a sort of big viola effect with a slow motion effect. And again, here we studied the object, we made the 3D scanning, we made all the studies about the materials, and we also printed the object because the museum's curators want to bring the treasure all around for exhibition, but not always it is possible to move the physical object. So nowadays the 3D pre-printing can be a solution. So you can move the object, obviously it's not the original one, but with the 3D printing, if you scan it really carefully, you can really have a product that is quite similar to the original one. And up to now I made evaluation on these 3 venues. The first one was Budapest, National Hungarian Museums. Here we have the holographic showcase included in a very big wall, so people has the possibility to see the real world into the showcase, but also information were projected outside. And then you have it always in Amsterdam, in the other Pearson museums. The showcase was smaller because, as I was saying till the beginning, there's not a unique solution. There are possible solutions. In Amsterdam, they didn't have enough spaces, so we created something smaller. And in the end, at Athens, also in bodies like this, we created something bigger. Some of us are also experimenting gaming. We have Sony Entertainment as partners. With new Visor, they are try to work on the motion sickness, so that it is actually a very crucial point. The majority of the time, if you put on your hand the headset afterwards, and always in the meanwhile, you feel a bit strange because there's problem of locomotion, it's called. So our researchers are working on eliminating this problem, so without feeling bad when you walk through this environment. Because remember, if you move in real life, you have a timing and you have also steps, and your point of view is changing quietly according to your movement. But if you are in a VR application, actually this is something that is accelerated, so you can really lose the focus, and it is a problem we are working on. This is our last product, is a night in the forum, with the subject. You have understood that we have a good relation with the Imperial Fora since we are in Rome. It's a treasure hunt in the night in the Imperial Fora with the Visor, and Sony sponsor us, and it will be released in March for free for a month, and then on payment on the platform, and you can use it on your game console. Connected to this, I can now present this event. It's the second edition. We have a partnership with Cinecittà. It is the big company about the cinema, very historical in Italy. And they created what we were telling yesterday, a hub for students and technological solution for entertainment and cultural heritage. So in this second year, we organized the video game lab. It is a lab that lasts 3 days, but it continues for 3 months, where people are together coming from different parties, from university, industries, research center, private section. They work together to create a final product, and only one will win, and the Cinecittà will found with money the realization of this product, and it is our second edition because we started last year. Last but not least, interfaces. So another technological solution for museums who have not spaces for big installation. The first one is a very old one, but it is still valid. It's an application for children, but it is very funny also for adults. The concept of this museum is in the Pleistocenic Museum of Casal de' Pazzi, close by Rome. The curators want to convey the idea that past and present are somehow connected. So in order to make children understand that the food of yesterday is not the same of today, and the way the people were in the past is not the same of today, but still there are some connection, we created this simple application. You can see it here very small, but you have seen it in the video. You have this middle line are icons suggesting you which are the things that you have to find between the past and the present. So children, I don't know, the apple appears, so you understand that you have to look for food. So in the past, where were the food? On the tree or on the floor in the plants. And today, and you look in the fridge, so you can click on the fridge, or you can click in the, I don't know, in the refrigerator, on the cooking machine. So it's very simple, it lasts 6 minutes, and it is quite immediate, also for adults, because it's very quick, but somehow it's not very easy, because for example, some people do wrong the last passage is, yes, it's this one. In the past, you have the fire for almost everything, for the light, for cooking, for having warm. in the present, you have the electricity, you have to cook, you have the herb, and you have also other things. So sometimes people forget that multiple meaning in the present was, let's say, answered by a single element in the past. And it is another application. It's reconstruction of the ancient Cerreto. It's a city in the south of Italy. And again here, I don't have time to show you, but as well, when we arrive to this, means that we have worked with drones on the area, reconstructing all the landscape, studying with geology and with topography and with Roman maps and all the things that are needed in order to create something, obviously with a scientific credibility, because otherwise it's not research, it's inventing the story of the past. And when we arrive here, it's a summary of lots of work, storytelling. Here it's another way of explaining content with simple informative panels, but also if you click on specific icons, you will see the 3D model, for example, of the castle appearing. So in a single application, you can have multiple vision. So if I have 1 second, just want to... I just wanted to show you a video on the holographic showcase. It's our, let's say, last day experimentation. We want to work on this more, even if in parallel we have other things. I will cut it now because it's long. It's the story of the Nichiren treasure. It's just a way to showing you which are the steps. We always work on small, medium museums realities. Not always, apart from the Imperial Foreign Museums and the Biblioteca Alexandrina, we always work on the small local museums, because a museum, as Marco was saying, is something that it is geographically located, has a community, has their own legacy, so it needs to be, you first have to fall in love with the people who live around the museums, because otherwise you will not bring people from abroad to see your own museums. This is the setup of the holographic showcase. In Athens, it was included inside the museum visit path. It is the placement of the real object, only the curator obviously could touch it. We scanning and we recreated the 3D models. The 3D models has two functions: study the object, but also provide a sort of digital restoration. So I show you how it will appear in the past without working on the real object. So it's still conservation, but it is also augmentation of the same museum object. So here it's part of the storytelling. The first part of the story is a common video, but projected on the real museums. And afterwards you see the animation coming from the object in order to create this match between the digital replica and the real one. This was the day of the opening, so all the local communities arrived. We were quite scared, so you see the real object, the digital copy.
Costly wares of the early Byzantine ruling class.
And now they're going
this
and explaining you.
As the other objects, was part of the domestic equipment.
So small caption. And here we recreated a simple tableau vivant, let's say, with a real actor, showing the function of that object, because okay, a candle is very easy to recognize, But for example, the trulla, it's not easy for people who don't know really what the trulla means. We simply recreated the idea of the water inside this object that was used to wash the baby in the tin.
They were a sign of a social status.
This is, for example, a bracelet.
Men's jewelry was often part of a military dress. Some golden pieces of the treasure are common and simple. Other ones of exceptionally fine art, like this. They were not all acquired at the same period and did not have the same provenance.
With the digital reconstruction,
bracelet
you can
with a double
see the
monogram
details
male
of
name
something that
only
usually
knows
museums
some
you see as
only
little,
one
you cannot come
monogram,
closer.
which makes it
I
very
show you the monogram, that it is not quite visible in the real one. And then the function. It was a simple bracelet of a child, and obviously this is something more functional, but at the end the message is that belonged to a baby. A baby was part of a family. And the last object is the trulla. Hope it is in the video.
The owners of the Mytilene treasure were Christians. However, they did not reject mythological subjects, as
So
commonly
again
happened
here the
among
possibility to
Christians,
enlarge
educated
the
Catholics.
decorations.
Such bowls were used as serving ladles, and probably also in bathing, as they are often decorated with marine themes.
Maybe it's not clear, but it's a baby and the mother is washing him. It's kind of slow motion, it's very simple, but I can assure you it really provides its effect. It's immediate and everybody understands the function of that object. Because in the end, all the story ends, and it is the truth, that an attack occurred in the family, and the owners, in order to not lose the memory of this object, buried this object under the soil. And that's it.
So I will do a short presentation where we are. We have, as I told you yesterday, a very long history of Georgian National Museum. And Georgian National Museum was the first big cultural body in whole Caucasus, which was created in 1852. What it means that it was Museum of Caucasus, which has in reality collections all over the whole Caucasus, and we have very big variety of collections. And now we created new network, which is has a different museums and research centers. So in a nutshell, what I wanted to say that we have on one hand very big treasury from different time periods, and what is our work since 2004, re-establish new institution based on all existing collection and experience which could be adapted to the 21st century. So this is our main direction, to combine on one hand history, science, art, but how to make it work. Right? Your examples, unfortunately I was not listening all of them, but I could imagine, and I will go through later. Maybe even it's better. So you already got to the point where you already established system, institution, and approaches. We are in transitional time at the moment, and maybe this is one hand advantage. And this I wanted to encourage colleagues who are listening here, that having no system, established strong system, is not so big disadvantage. This is an opportunity. Look on it as an opportunity to use what all you presented in, at least in the last presentation, how to be integrated on the national storytelling. We are starting, one hand, on with very big tradition, but from other hand, we are restarting presenting national narrative. what is Georgia is about and how to tell the story through different methods and different positions. And this is met today, we will have in other parts tomorrow, and working, may I say, positioning in city, where we have this ambitious name to be Acropolis of Georgian culture, and it's a naturally created this passage on the Skudiashvili Street, which is from 19th century main place of Georgian cultural heritage, where you have main museums, National Library, now we have New Art Center and other private foundation. So what I want to say that we have already existed this place, and now it's a point how to be adapted, how to have a core, but at the same time to think of the system. My point is that we want to create a network which has a both connection, vertical and horizontal, but to have the functionally, they all should be in one direction with different aspects, of course. And to build, keeping, this is, you can see, exactly 19th century collection. We are not able today to have like, I don't know, American Natural History Museum we were having in New York or Smithsonian. So we are more in this place, more collection-based classical museum in this case. We have 19th century collection, for example, natural history, but here we are adapting what was in last slide. How to find this dialogue, 19th century with 21st century, but not forgetting 20th century. But of course everything based on collection, or the wide range collection, starting from early prehistory and natural science, going with Pirosmani, Kakavadze, Iliashvili. So this is a challenge, how to have a right way in one big system together 20th century art and dinosaur science. But if you will put it from the other side and look it as a resource and as collection, then it's same management, the same approach. But this is exactly a challenge for all of us, how to adapt it, not just by words. But you always need storyline. Excuse me, I started with the research, which is mostly myself. But this is an opportunity how Georgia could be built national narrative. I was asked what is more important, national or international. It should be both. So we are building by big stories, starting like earliest humans, to talking about it, using all these international, may I say, opportunities and recognitions and to build it. Now I am not presenting here a new museum which we will build in Manisi, which will be this, exactly this place, but it will be site museum, connected exactly with research, international education and presentation. And another big story when we are talking about narratives is a story which connected with agriculture, with wine, with these questions, but how to present it, it's another way. Let me repeat, so our challenge is to find this balance, high-end research and communication. This is a case. In our case, our niche is high-end excellence in research and grassroots. This is two philosophies, let's say two targets, main targets, which is a national museum, and I think every our museum should find identity, and they are in reality new cultural centers. But without excellency of science, you couldn't get it, and this is a very good example of wine story. And once more, let's say, this is a good case to see how you could have big international problem with humans, agriculture, but how you can transform after finding it, after international research and international recognition, in a national narrative like Georgian country or viniculture, and then to build another case which is a continuity. So we want to tell a story that Georgia has diversity natural and has a continuity in history. So in reality, in this stage, as a national heritage politic, may I say, that science is to find a way, this horizontal network, where we are calling almost same messages in different places, but with different aspect and different accents. This is our work, to have the today's stage. It's maybe 10 simple messages, narratives, but this message should be developed later in different places. So, like Golden Fleece, right? The story of Golden Fleece, and you will see tomorrow, this is our very strong asset to tell story, our connections, one hand with Greco-Roman wall, but from other hand to have own narrative, which is a Colchis. So this is another good example how we could connect it, how to find and work on this new museum or the site museum, and as well as I think we need to develop big clusters. You mentioned about smart cities, right? Or smart places. We have little bit different maybe tasks. We can create region and story, for example, Colchis. So all what I heard in your work, so now is all of ours working, find the not simple copy-pasting of the technology, but integrating it. How to find it, and this is research. And one of our approaches, may I say, I don't know why it's not a little further, it's so this is another, sorry, I will do short case. I like very much this Greek presentation of Greek Museum as a functional, right? And it's very good, I think. Now it's a case, what is bottom? Where you are starting it. You know, is it just simply showing the function of the necklace was to have it on it, or earrings, which is clear, or maybe to go deeper questions, to do experiments, which tells you much more, let's say, multi-layered problems, like story of metal, all reconstruction of Bronze Age goldsmith, but through real experiment. And I'm very happy to say that we have already 2 experiments with Mr. Magrazze, one on medieval enamel cloisonné, and second, and this is of the Bronze Age, I will show this, and now it's our point. We got here through classical experiments where we found functions of different archaeological objects which were not clear, but now how to present. So leave it in classical way or find this what you presented. This is a natural, what I wanted to tell my colleagues and collaborators. Let's find own way of storytelling which will be a natural identity of museum and national history. So building this approach using experiments could be one of it. And telling national history, maybe sometimes not 500 objects for one period, but use one object through it. So this is a way, may I say, that what we want to develop, to have this central national history museum with not many objects, but through objects tell stories, but develop these stories in different places with identity. Like this is our museum in the high mountains, where we have the narrative of medieval culture, and really this is maybe one of the refugium of Byzantine culture, but to find storytelling connected is a very specific and very sensitive subject like this, religious, right? So this is another option. Another challenge is, and I'm sure that Italy knows quite well how to deal with this. And it's interesting that you work with Greek, right? This is exactly where you see, for example, this very important narrative, your identity is connected with the religious, in our case with Orthodox Christianity, but which has a root in classical period. This is a story which we need to tell in every place. What is your uniqueness, how to use it, and
regional centers. You said you use these smart cities. I think all our museums should be like smartphone with different functions and not just, as I told you, the centers, and find these identities like we had one in Seminari, this is in Eastern Georgia with the art, but these multifunctional and different activities like theater, cinema, opera here, we're doing, of course, today it's in every museum is doing outreach. But let me be once more why we are meeting why we have this experience, why we want to listen to you, what we want to learn, how to find identity. I want to say to all young people, find identity for every museum and every corner. This is something which we still have opportunity. You can't do it in German museums. Everything is structured, everything is done. And find on that way, think about, of course we have many exhibitions. Just it was 1 year, 91 exhibition, more than local, but to be really, which is written exclusively in Georgian, exactly these many functions, art meets science, makes culture, and today we are preparing one more exhibition with Italian embassy, and it was Antonio's idea. Next will be next month, project about Leonardo, virtual Leonardo. It's not just telling you the Last Supper image to see. For me, this is for you to tell the values of Leonardo, values and approach of Renaissance, what you need today to build with technology. So my point is, let me repeat and I will finish, that Georgia is a small country in this case with heritage, needs own place, but museums and heritage could be, own place I mean in the world, could be good tool. Good tool where we could find something where, like, excuse me, I'm repeating it, a win-win, right? How we could bring for world importance, or creating, of course, the new National Center for Art, and we are doing now the Conservation Center, and I have a good news that it seems that we are getting all funds. So this would serve to tell one hand, of course, local story, but big story. So let's find a way where transmitting our knowledge, starting from, let's say, 10 million, and going today, and where is this correlation? So I think we have a lot of opportunities, and main thing is not stop to think. Many years ago, maybe when I became director, I couldn't imagine that 1 year we could have exhibitions of Tiziano, Leonardo, and it was like top dream team together in Georgia. But now it's possible. This is opportunities to have in two directions and think bigger. And I don't know if Andrew is still here, rector of the Business and Technology University. We have, one is public outreach. Of course, it's number one, without any, exaggeration. For us, number one is public outreach, grassroots, and it's much more important than, number of tourism visitors. This is something where we are building future wealth, and all these programs starting from different parts is part of it. But what could be done? And all these opportunities, you saw this, our VR or augmented reality has been done by students. The idea is museum, and we have a chance to be research lab, and not just to wait when you are wealthy and you will buy this from different companies. Let's make them integrated. And our case is Business and Technology Universities. Very good case, I would say. And I'm also proud to, after tomorrow, we will announce art incubator connected with technology in Tbilisi Museum. That's an opportunity. This I wanted to tell you. Let's study what you have done, but let's try to integrate it. Not just, there are opportunities. We have this, let's say, entrepreneurial approach, but learn from you how to make, and then tomorrow maybe we both can present it to other countries who are struggling, not just wait something will come from the up to the bottom, but to create yourself. And this is our last very special project, which also we are doing with Business Technology University, Microsoft, Georgian Space Agency. This is a story about wine in Mars. It's crazy on one hand, but it exists, and you can, and museum is highlighting it. I'm proud to say that in the last week Washington Post highlighted it, but this is a chance. You know, it never works immediately, you can get it, but if you will try, you have a chance to it. And so let's think of this, even this crazy idea that we have 8,000 years old history, but 9th millennium wine cultivation cannot be on Mars, but the museum could be generator and also supporter of life. This is the point. We are not just with technology, we have no technology, but technology needs stories and assets, and we have assets. Let's look in our collections, let's look around the nature, what are our assets to connect with technology and 21st century. And this is seemed crazy, but you can't do good things without craziness. Okay? Let's be like crazy, not fully crazy, but to be really never give up at it. And on one hand, I think it was wonderful to say, okay, we have almost 200 history museums or so, but let's look on future on this base and not just by words. So thank you, and I think what you presented today is exactly what we need to use all these assets, all these upstream, to write downstream, and I hope we will be partners. Thank you very much.